The first insult didn't come from his mouth. It came from his eyes. They swept over me the way people glance at loose threads, casual, dismissive, certain the thing they're looking at is beneath them. I stood inside the boutique doorway, brushing off a few snowflakes from my shoulders. Soft piano music played overhead, blending with the faint scent of bergamot and leather, luxury pretending to be effortless. My coat was warm, textured wool, hand-stitched, crafted decades ago. A $40 thrift store find with a history richer than anything on these racks. But he didn't see any of that. He only saw cheap. He leaned toward his coworker, loud enough to be heard by anyone who wasn't supposed to hear. Vintage, he smirked. More like a donation bin chic. A couple of men laughed, too loudly, the way people do when they're performing for each other. I didn't flinch, didn't defend myself, didn't correct him. Instead, I walked past them, letting the chandelier light catch the faint shimmer of the mother-of-pearl buttons on my sleeve. A small luxury detail, nearly invisible unless you paid attention. He hadn't. "Can we help you find something within a certain budget?" he asked, voice dipped in faux politeness. There it was. The real jab. His coworker elbowed him like he'd said something witty. I simply smiled, slow, warm, absolutely disarming. "I'm just browsing," I said softly. He nodded, already bored, already certain he'd cataloged me correctly. They always thought they could. Behind him, a curated display of designer suits stood under gold lighting, structured shoulders, Italian wool, hand-pressed seams. One of them, a deep charcoal piece with subtle pinstripes, had a familiar cut. A cut I knew intimately because I had approved that silhouette myself years ago when the brand was still struggling. But he didn't know that. Why would he? He didn't recognize the curved stitching on the lapel or the signature double-back vent. He didn't recognize the woman who funded those changes. He didn't recognize me at all. That was the gift of staying invisible. People revealed themselves long before you ever had to. I touched a few fabrics, letting them run between my fingers. Silk lining cool as winter air, velvet in deep midnight blue, the soft whine of hangers sliding across a brass rod. Luxury always had a sound, and tonight it was whispering. "Just let me know if you need sizes," he said, still amused by his own joke. I nodded. "Thank you." He didn't see the way the store manager's eyes widened slightly when I walked by. He didn't see the second glance from the associate in the back, the one who recognized my face from an investor summit. He didn't see the tiny respectful nod she gave me, quick and professional. He also didn't see the email alert I received at that exact moment. A vibration in my pocket. A quiet buzz of power. Final confirmation. Acquire Falcon and Row $118 million. Board vote unanimous. Congratulations, Madam Chairwoman. I looked up from my phone just long enough to meet his eyes again. "Find everything all right?" he asked, smirking, holding a $900 suit like a trophy. I smiled. "More than you know." I left the store without another word. There was no need. Luxury revenge isn't loud. It's patient. The morning after the boutique incident felt soft, almost weightless. Snow still clung to the window frames of my brownstone townhouse, an old, restored gem tucked between two newer, louder buildings. Mine had history. Thick crown molding. Mahogany doors. A staircase that creaked like it whispered in its sleep. People always assumed I lived in a penthouse. Luxury wasn't about height. It was about silence. I padded barefoot across the heated marble floors, the warmth grounding me. My kitchen smelled faintly of cinnamon and vanilla, left over from the tea I brewed the night before. The kettle hummed quietly as I filled it again. This was my sanctuary. No judgments. No assumptions. No eyes trying to decide my worth based on fabric. I wrapped myself in the same thrifted wool coat from last night. It hung on the back of a leather dining chair, soft from decades of wear. I traced the stitching with a fingertip, the tiny hand-sewn details that only artisans knew how to do anymore. My grandmother taught me to see quality, not labels. Luxury, she used to say, is about intention, not price. That was why I still wore thrift. It reminded me of her, of roots deeper than wealth, of hands that worked, not just waved. After tea, I moved upstairs to my study, A room filled with sunlight and quiet ambition. White bookshelves. Soft beige drapes. A single glass desk with brass legs. And on the center of it, a handwritten holiday card from Falcon and Rose board. Welcome home, chairwoman. I smiled at it. It still didn't feel real sometimes. My phone buzzed. A calendar reminder. Investment review, Falcon and Row 3 p.m. Location, corporate HQ. A second reminder slid in below it. Holiday gala prep. Confirm appearance. I closed the notifications. That gala. I wasn't looking forward to it. Not because I hated crowds, but because the same boutique employees from last night were scheduled to staff the VIP floor. My new company had hired them for the event months before I bought it. They'd be pouring champagne, guiding guests, standing in the same room as me, with no idea I was their new employer. I slipped on a pearl bracelet, simple, elegant, cool against my wrist. The type of accessory that whispered wealth instead of shouting it. My grandmother's again. Quiet legacy. I glanced at my reflection in the hallway mirror. Natural curls pinned back. Soft makeup. Nothing loud. Just composed. People assumed power sounded like heels on marble or the clink of glasses. But real power? It was the kind of silence that made others nervous. Before heading out, I stopped at a small velvet box tucked in my drawer. Inside was a key, old, silver, engraved with intricate swirls. The boutique owner had given it to me years ago when the brand was nearly bankrupt. For when this place becomes yours one day, he'd said. Back then I laughed. Now, I understood he wasn't predicting the future. He was recognizing something in me before I ever saw it in myself. I slid the key into my coat pocket. Not for revenge. Just for timing. At 2:45 p.m., I stepped out of my townhouse and into the crisp winter air. Snowflakes drifted down slowly, settling on my coat like tiny stars. My driver opened the door of the black sedan. Falcon and Row headquarters, Ms. Ellis? He asked. I nodded. Let's keep today quiet, I said. He smiled knowingly. With you, ma'am, it always is. As we pulled away, I leaned my head back and let the city blur past. A calm before a storm no one else could see. Not yet. Falcon and Row's headquarters always looked like it had been built for winter. Glass walls tinted gold by the afternoon light, polished stone floors reflecting every silhouette that passed. The lobby smelled faintly of cedar and bergamot, a signature scent the company spent 6 figures perfecting. I'd chosen to enter through the front doors today. Not the private elevator. Not the executive garage. Just the lobby, where assumptions live freely. The moment I stepped inside, heads turned. Not in admiration. In assessment. 2 receptionists whispered. One pointed at my thrifted coat. The other smirked and typed something into her phone. I walked up to the desk anyway, offering a polite smile. Good afternoon. I'm here for... Before I finished, the brunette on the left cut me off with a raised hand. Deliveries go through the side entrance. Back alley. Look for the silver door. Her tone wasn't cruel. It was worse. Casual disrespect, the kind people say without thinking because they've said it too many times. A few feet away, an intern nudged her friend and whispered, probably a seasonal hire. I kept my breath slow. Quiet luxury isn't a performance. It's restraint. I'm not making a delivery, I said softly. I have a 3 o'clock meeting. The receptionist rolled her eyes. Then you're in the wrong building. Investor meetings are next door at the... Brooke? Someone shouted. A man in a navy suit hurried over, tie crooked from rushing. He brushed past me as if I were part of the decor. You can't let guests wander around. We have VIPs coming in today. VIPs. I almost laughed. He turned to me finally. Ma'am, this area is restricted. Please wait outside until someone can assist you properly. His words landed like cold water. Not harsh. Just dismissive. Like I was something misplaced. I nodded slowly. Of course. As I stepped aside, a cluster of employees passed by. One, a young white woman with glossy hair and a clipboard, gave me a look that skimmed me head to toe. Coat, boots, bare hands without gloves. A silent judgment. She whispered to another. Reception should have directed her to HR. New hires keep showing up without badges. Her friend giggled. At least she dressed warmly. I inhaled once, let it settle inside me, and released it quietly. Let them look. Let them underestimate. They always do before they learn. Just then, the elevator doors opened with a soft chime, and out stepped him, the boutique man, the same one who mocked my coat, laughed with his coworker, and told me quality matters. He wore a pristine black suit this time, navy tie, shoes polished enough to reveal his reflection. His gaze swept across the lobby board until it hit my face. Recognition flickered, then amusement, then something smug. Wow, he said loudly, walking toward me. Didn't know you worked here too. They starting a dress warm program. A few people nearby laughed. Softly. Enough to sting. He leaned closer. Still wearing the vintage? He teased, tapping the sleeve of my coat like it offended him. I didn't flinch. It's warm. He chuckled. Yeah. 4 sidewalks, maybe. Not exactly corporate ready, sweetheart. Someone snickered behind him. Another whispered, imagine showing up to HQ like that. The boutique man straightened his tie, pleased with himself. Need help finding HR? Or the thrift shop? My heart stayed steady. My expression stayed soft. My silence stayed lethal. A security guard approached the boutique man from behind. Mr. Hale? The board is asking for you upstairs. He grinned. See? Real employees get priority. He winked at me as he stepped into the elevator. Try the alley entrance next time. The doors closed. Laughter lingered. But power? It stayed exactly where it always was, quiet, centered, waiting. I smoothed the cuff of my coat, the stitching soft beneath my fingertip. One tiny detail no one here noticed. Yet, I waited until the lobby emptied a little, letting the echo of their laughter soften against the marble. Humiliation settles differently when it's delivered in front of others. It clings to the air, not the skin. People assume it bruises you, but sometimes it sharpens you instead. A woman in a charcoal blazer approached me, scanning my face with the quick efficiency of someone trained to assess problems before they grow legs. Are you here for the 3 o'clock? She asked. Her tone was polite, careful, borderline deferential. The receptionist stiffened. Yes, I answered. The woman nodded. Ms. Ellis, right? They've been waiting upstairs. The receptionist's jaw dropped so quietly it almost didn't make a sound. I didn't look at her. Grace is a weapon that doesn't need aim. Follow me, the woman said. As we crossed the lobby, murmurs rose behind us, confused, uneasy. Wait, she has a meeting upstairs? With who? Why would she? Is she, important? Their questions floated after me like weak perfume. In the elevator, the woman in the blazer pressed a keycard into the panel. We rose past the floors where the mockers lived. Marketing, logistics, design. Floors filled with people who had already decided who I was. Quietly, the elevator climbed toward 12. Just a note, she said softly. The board asked that you come directly to the conference suite. They've been preparing all morning. Preparing. For me. The doors opened into a corridor quieter than the rest of the building. The lighting here was different. Soft gold instead of bright white, shadows controlled deliberately. Art lined the walls. Abstract pieces framed in dark mahogany, each worth more than the lobby workers' monthly salaries. A subtle reminder of where power actually lived. As we walked, 2 executives passed us mid-conversation. They caught sight of me, halted, and straightened. Ms. Ellis, one said with a nod. Good to see you. The other smiled nervously. We appreciate you making the time. Their voices carried down the hallway, echoing into rooms where employees certainly heard. The woman in the blazer continued walking, but the shift in the air followed us. A few steps later, a young intern stumbled out of an office, clutching a stack of reports. Papers spilled across the floor. She dropped to her knees instantly. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I wasn't watching. It's all right, I said. She looked up. Her eyes widened the moment she heard my name from the blazer woman's lips. Did you say Ms. Ellis? The intern froze, flushing a deep, painful red. The realization flickered across her face, a name she'd heard in meetings, in emails marked confidential, in board briefings she'd only copied but never read. Oh, Just one syllable. One sinking syllable. We kept walking. The hallway opened into a waiting area with floor-to-ceiling windows, a panoramic view of the city. The early winter light caught in the glass, scattering across the marble floor like crushed ice. The receptionist from downstairs stepped out of the elevator at that exact moment. Her eyes found me. Confusion. Recognition. Then dread. She started to speak, but no words formed. I just offered a calm, polite nod and walked past her into the conference suite. Inside, the room was silent. Half a dozen people stood as I entered. Not out of politeness, out of protocol. The long table was set with crystal carafes, embossed folders, and documents with falcon and row letterheads. The chair at the head of the table, the one reserved for the highest authority present, waited empty. The blazer woman gestured to it. "Please, Ms. Ellis." A few executives shifted uneasily, as if they weren't sure whether they were supposed to look directly at me. I sat down slowly, smoothing the sleeve of my coat. Across the table, someone whispered, "Is she the Simone Ellis?" Another responded under his breath, "I thought she was just a consultant." "No," the CFO murmured. "She's..." He stopped mid-sentence when I raised one eyebrow. Silence rippled outward like a tide pulling every assumption with it. But still, not one mocker from downstairs imagined the truth. The disrespect lingered in their minds longer than any clue. Good. That always makes the reveal sharper. The conference suite had a way of holding silence, like a velvet curtain absorbing every sound. Even the city noise below seemed filtered, softened, reduced to a gentle hum. A winter sun poured through the glass, glinting against the crystal water pitchers, throwing tiny diamonds of light onto the table. I set my thrifted coat neatly on the back of my chair. A few executives stared at it. Not at me. At the coat. Their brains were working, but not fast enough. The CFO shuffled his papers, voice tight. "We'll begin as soon as the final reports arrive. Ms. Ellis, could I interest you in anything?" "Tea." "Sparkling water." The receptionist from downstairs stood near the doorway, pale as linen. She was trying to disappear into the trim. The blazer woman whispered something to her, something that involved the words protocol and respect, but the receptionist's eyes stayed glued to my coat like it was a riddle she couldn't solve. I simply nodded. "Sparkling water is fine." The CFO nearly sprinted to pour it himself. Another clue. But the people from downstairs wouldn't see it. Not yet. He set the glass in front of me with both hands, careful not to spill a drop. His fingers trembled slightly. "We want to update you first on the holiday quarter projections. Your investment group will see a significant shift." "Investment group." He said it as if it were delicate, a word that needed to be wrapped in tissue paper. I lifted the water slowly, letting the crystal catch the light. "Let me see the reports." He handed me a folder. Thick, weighty. Its cover embossed with falcon and rose crest. Inside, my signature. On the contract. On the acquisition. On the controlling percentage. Several executives tried not to stare at the document, though I watched their eyes flick to it like magnets they couldn't resist. The receptionist's mouth parted slightly. She recognized the signature too, even if she didn't want to believe it. Before anyone could speak, the door opened. A man stepped inside holding a stack of documents. I recognized him immediately. Mr. Hill. The boutique man. The one who laughed at my coat. The one who joked about vintage. The one who told me to use the alley entrance. He froze when he saw me sitting at the head of the table, but only for a moment. Then he smiled, condescendingly. He said, "They let you in." The CFO's face drained of color. The blazer woman inhaled sharply, but no one stopped him. Not yet. People rarely interrupt arrogance. It tends to reveal itself. Hale placed the documents on the table with a thud. "Here are the updated branding proposals. Do you need me to review them slowly? I know some of these terms can be complicated." A couple of people tried to signal him, eyes widening, heads shaking, but Hale wasn't looking at them. He was too focused on performing. "For me." "No," I said. "I'll manage." He chuckled under his breath. "Sure. But if you need help understanding the valuation, Hale, the CFO snapped. Hale blinked, startled. "What?" The CFO swallowed hard. Show some respect. For who? Hale laughed. She's not even. His words caught. Because the CFO slid a document across the table toward him. The acquisition report. With my signature in black ink. Hale skimmed the front page, confusion wrinkling his forehead. Then his eyes hit the controlling stake line. Ellis Capital, 62%. His mouth opened. Closed. Opened again. He looked at me like he was seeing a ghost. Or worse, truth. What is this? He whispered. No one answered. The blazer woman muttered under her breath. The clues were everywhere. But people like Hale don't see clues. They see only themselves reflected in their own confidence. Silence thickened around us. Hale staggered back slightly, as if the floor had shifted. Then another knock. Another interruption. This time it was the company's general counsel. He entered with a leather folder and bowed his head toward me. Ms. Ellis, the final papers are ready for your signature. Hale flinched. Your signature? He stared at me like the world had turned upside down. Still, he didn't fully understand. Not yet. Good. The next piece would break him cleanly. Hale didn't sit down. He couldn't. His body hovered near the doorway like he was searching for an exit that didn't exist. The executives watched him the way people watch a glass fall in slow motion, not because they care about the glass, but because destruction fascinates them. The general counsel placed the leather folder gently in front of me. Whenever you're ready, Ms. Ellis. He said my name with care. With weight. With expectation. Another clue. Hale looked at the lawyer, then at the CFO, then at me, like we were all participating in an inside joke at his expense. His throat bobbed as he swallowed. I thought Ellis Capital was just an investor, he muttered. The CFO answered evenly, they are. But this, Hale pointed a trembling finger at the document. This says they're the majority stakeholder, I finished softly. A hush fell so thick it almost hummed. Somebody exhaled. Somebody whispered, oh my God. Somebody else shifted their chair like they couldn't sit properly anymore. Hale's face drained of color. He opened his mouth, closed it, then tried again. But I downstairs you. I thought you were just. He didn't finish the sentence. No one in this room was going to help him. A phone buzzed on the table. The CFO glanced at it and immediately straightened. It's the board chair, he said, startled. He looked at me. Do you want me to pick up? Put it on speaker, I said. Hale froze. The CFO pressed the button. A crisp, authoritative voice filled the room. Is Ms. Ellis with you? Yes, the CFO replied. Good, the chair said. Tell her the remaining documents for the takeover will be ready in 10 minutes. And thank her again for her discretion during this transition. Every head turned toward me. Hale stumbled backward, hitting the door frame with his shoulder. Takeover. The word landed like crystal shattering. Even the receptionist from downstairs, still hovering near the corner, trying to pretend she wasn't horrified, stared at me as if I'd removed a mask she hadn't known I was wearing. It's true, she whispered, barely audible. I didn't respond. Silence was enough. After the call ended, the room felt too small for Hale's panic. He tried to recover himself, straightening his tie. This must be some misunderstanding. It isn't, the CFO said firmly. The blazer woman stepped forward. Her voice was gentle, professional. Mr. Hale, Ms. Ellis will be approving all Q4 branding decisions. Hale's neck snapped toward me. Approving? Her? Why? The general counsel spoke this time. Because she owns your brand's parent company. Hale blinked. Hard. Twice. My what? The CFO folded his hands. The boutique where you work. The brand you represent. And the designer label you brag about. All of them fall under Ellis Capital. Hale stared at me like he was trying to reconcile two images. The woman in the thrift store coat. And the woman whose pen controlled his career. His voice broke. I didn't know. You weren't supposed to, I said quietly. Not yet. He pressed a hand to his forehead, as if the room had tilted beneath him. He replayed everything. Every joke, every smirk, every insult like it was a montage he suddenly regretted starring in. Another executive entered with a tablet. Ms. Ellis, these require your digital approval. She handed it to me, her posture respectful, almost reverent. Hale flinched at the sight of my name on the screen. Signatory authority, Simone Ellis. Position, chairwoman, Ellis Capital. Someone gasped. Someone whispered, "She really is." Hale cut through the noise with a voice barely holding together. Are you taking over my department?" I looked at him steadily. "Your department," I said, "is the least of what's changing." His knees almost buckled. The receptionist sank into a chair, mortified beyond repair. The interns avoided eye contact entirely. The executives exchanged glances, nervous, calculating, suddenly aware of the shift in power dynamics. But no one dared speak. Not when the luxury of silence weighed heavier than any insult they had given me. Hale finally found his voice again, thin, trembling. "So what happens now?" I closed the tablet softly and placed it on the table. "You'll know," I said, "when I sign." The room exhaled in unison. His future, hanging by a thread he had woven himself. The conference room felt too quiet, like the air itself was waiting for permission to move. Winter light brushed across the glass table, illuminating scattered documents, untouched crystal glasses, and Hale's trembling hands. Every pair of eyes was on me. But I didn't raise my voice. I didn't shift in my chair. I didn't need to. Quiet power doesn't ask for attention. It draws it. I opened the leather folder the general counsel brought, slowly, intentionally. Inside were the final takeover documents, acquisition terms, restructuring plans, and the new executive hierarchy. Hale leaned forward as if watching a bomb about to detonate. I adjusted the pen between my fingers, letting the gold nib catch the light. A small, simple gesture. But the room flinched. "Thank you all for your work," I began, my voice steady. "This transition has been enlightening." The CFO nodded too quickly. "We're honored to have your guidance." Guidance? What a polite word for control. I slid the first document toward me and signed. One stroke. Two. My signature settled on the paper like the final note in a symphony. Hale's breath hitched. The receptionist wiped her palms on her skirt. Interns held perfectly still. The blazer woman cleared her throat gently. "Ms. Ellis, would you prefer we begin with the restructuring outline?" I tapped the second folder with one finger. "I'd like to start," I said, "by addressing something simpler." The room tensed. I reached behind me and lifted my thrift store coat from the back of my chair, laying it across the table like evidence. Its fabric, navy wool, softened by years, contrasted sharply with the marble surface. Hale swallowed hard. "Some of you," I began softly, "were very vocal about this coat." No one dared speak. "It was called vintage," I continued. "Outdated. Cheap." The receptionist looked down, cheeks burning. I let the silence build, then added, "But I've always liked it. It belonged to my mother. She wore it when she signed the papers for her first boutique investment. She told me once, 'Never let fabric tell you who you are.'" The executives looked stunned. Her words hung in the air, weaving themselves into the tension. I folded the coat carefully. Clothing doesn't reveal value. Behavior does. A single tear slipped down the receptionist's cheek. She wiped it away quickly, as if it might cost her a week's pay. I turned to Hale. "Mr. Hale, you made comments about my coat. About my place in this building. About where I should enter." My tone never rose. "Do you recall?" He nodded, tiny and broken. Yes. You told me to use the alley entrance." He shut his eyes. "And you mocked me in your boutique," I said. "In front of your colleague." Silence stretched until it felt physical. Hale whispered, "I didn't know who you were." "That's the point," I replied. "You didn't need to know. Respect shouldn't depend on status." A few executives shifted guiltily. The CFO took a slow breath. "Ms. Ellis, if there is any disciplinary action you'd like to take." "Not yet," I said. Hale blinked. "Not yet." I stood for the first time since entering the room. The entire table stood with me. I walked to the head of the room, where a floor-to-ceiling window reflected the city below, the skyline sharp and cold against the winter sun. I looked out for a moment, letting the view settle like a final brushstroke in an oil painting. Then I turned back. "I bought this company," I said quietly, "not to embarrass anyone. Not to flaunt anything. I paused. But because my mother built her life through fashion. Because this company needed leadership. And because I believe in potential that others overlook. Every person in the room held their breath. Finally, I looked at Hale, calmly, evenly. But I do not tolerate arrogance that hides behind ignorance. For the first time, Hale didn't speak. Couldn't. The blazer woman answered instead, voice trembling with a mix of awe and relief. Ms. Ellis, she said, what would you like done next? I placed a hand on my mother's coat. Next, I replied, we talk about accountability. Accountability. The word hung in the air like a quiet decree, gentle, but impossible to ignore. The executives exchanged uncertain glances. Hale stood frozen near the door, his confidence shattered, his bravado gone. The receptionist's breathing was shallow. She held her hands together like she was afraid they might tremble in front of me. I walked back to my chair and sat slowly, letting the silence settle. Power isn't loud. It's the stillness everyone else feels the need to fill. Let's begin, I said. The CFO cleared his throat. Ms. Ellis, we can issue a formal reprimand to Mr. Hale. Suspension. Demotion. Whatever you decide. Hale swallowed. Please. I lifted a hand gently. He stopped speaking. Mr. Hale, I said softly, your career shouldn't depend on whether I like you. A flicker of hope crossed his face. But your future here, I continued, should depend on whether you've learned anything. The hope collapsed. Hale's voice broke. I have. I swear I have. I nodded once. Good. Then this is what happens next. Every back straightened. Every breath stilled. You will not be fired, I said. Shock rippled across the room. It wasn't mercy. It was strategy. You will remain in your position for the remainder of the quarter, I continued. You will assist with the holiday rebranding initiative. And you will do it under the supervision of the woman you dismissed downstairs. Hale jerked his head toward the receptionist. Her eyes widened in disbelief. A hand flew to her mouth. And I added, you will issue a written apology to the entire team, not for insulting me, but for contributing to a culture where respect depends on status. Hale's face crumbled. Shame washed over him so visibly it softened the room. Yes, he whispered. I can do that. I turned to the receptionist. As for you, she stiffened, bracing for impact. You let your assumptions speak before your professionalism, I said. But you also learned from them. I saw it. Her lips parted. I'm sorry, she whispered. I know, I replied. And because you're willing to grow, you will receive the first mentorship slot in our leadership development program. Her knees nearly buckled. Tears glazed her eyes. Thank you, she whispered. The interns were next. They stood straighter, nervously awaiting judgment. You all made assumptions too, I said. Small ones. Whispered ones. But I won't punish youth for curiosity. I'll only ask you to remember something. They nodded. When you underestimate someone, you're telling the world more about you than them. The room fell still. Not a breath moved. The lesson landed the way it was meant to, not like punishment, but like truth. I stood again, lifting my mother's coat from the table. As I slipped it on, the velvet lining brushed my wrists, warm and familiar, like an inheritance made of memory rather than money. The CFO stepped aside to give me room. Executives parted like a quiet tide. I walked toward the door, heels tapping softly against the marble, slow, deliberate, unhurried. My steps echoed through the corridor, carrying a message clearer than anything spoken today. Power doesn't need a stage. It only needs a moment. Just as I reached the elevator, Hale called after me. Ms. Ellis. I paused. I'm sorry, he said. His voice trembled. Not because of your position. Because I treated you like someone who didn't matter. I met his eyes. Everyone matters, I said. You just forgot that. Don't forget it again. The elevator doors opened. I stepped inside. The city skyline shimmered through the glass as the doors slid shut, sealing the moment in silence. The expensive kind, the kind that tastes like closure. And as the elevator descended, I let out a slow breath. Justice didn't need to shout. It whispered, and the whole building heard it. If you've ever been underestimated, or judged before they even knew your name. Tell me your story. Sometimes the quietest people carry the strongest truth. What would you have done in her place?